Good morning. You look like very warm-hearted individuals. That may be the only part that's warm, but it's an important part of us. You know, as I look around, I haven't any identical twins here? No identical twins? Well, I thought so, because everybody looks different from everybody else. You know, there are some things that seem to be similar, with arms and legs, heads and eyes, but there is not uniformity through the room, is there? No. I think God likes it that way. I think God made us to be this way. I think God has made the creation, the whole creation, to be magnificently non-uniform, except in its essential core. And that is the Creator. And that is the Creator. And that is the Creator who intends for all of us in our magnificent complexity and diversity to work together for the betterment of all. Let us be in prayer. Gracious and loving God, you have called us to this place, in this hour, in the time of calamities and confusion and contention. You have called this magnificent assembly, along with others in other places all over the country, all over the world. For many different reasons, people come together so that we may cry out together for justice, for all, not just for some, for all. For that is your cry, the cry of your Spirit within us and all around us, that there should be justice as we work together to do your work. Bless us all in that great power, we pray. Amen. Amen. And welcome to Asbury. There are restrooms beneath that opening out there, downstairs. And so if you need those, you know where to find them. And I'm Pastor Joe, and I'll be glad to help you, and so will some of our other hospitality corps at any time that you need some help. Be yourselves and be God's instruments.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Warmed up yet? Yeah. I promise you, you'll have some heat by the time you leave here. My name is Jacqueline Proctor. I'm listed as Deputy Commissioner for the Bureau of Senior Services, but I'm also proudly a commission member of the Martin Luther King Jr. Statewide Holiday Commission. And I welcome you all here today. So, good morning. Good morning. We will start our program today with our traditional hymn, Lift Every Voice and Sing, with the congregation and the choir.
Oh
Chair of the Martin Luther King Jr. State Holiday Commission, and newly appointed Executive Director of the Herbert Henderson Office of Minority Affairs. Please welcome her. Thank you. Good morning. I bring greetings from Jim Justice, Governor of West Virginia. As Governor, it is my pleasure to welcome you to today's celebration of the life of a truly invaluable icon of American history, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. It is truly heartening to see such an important tribute take place in the Mountain State as we honor both his life and his contributions to our society. Dr. King was among our country's greatest leaders of the 20th century. He accepted what surely must have seemed like countless challenges and immeasurable resolve. His extraordinary vision and perseverance were cornerstones of a revolution, which changed the face of America forever. Dr. King made his mark upon individuals and society alike, working diligently toward the advancement of improved racial relations and understanding. His tireless efforts are to be praised and looked upon as a shining example for us all. On behalf of the citizens of West Virginia, please accept my best wishes for a successful and enjoyable event today and in the future. It has been a privilege to work with the Commission on these efforts to celebrate and commemorate the life and legacy of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Sincerely, Jim Justice, Governor. I also bring greetings to you this morning from the Herbert Henderson Office of Minority Affairs. We are humbled to join with you in the spirit of unity as we celebrate and remember the life of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I invite you to attend the symbolic march and bell ringing following the service. I am happy to announce that our governor himself will be present at today's bell ringing and will deliver brief remarks. After the bell ringing, we invite you to join us at the Culture Center for a reception where light refreshments will be served. Also this coming Thursday, you are invited on January 24th to attend the Herbert Henderson Office of Minority Affairs Open House. You can come any time between the hours of 2 p.m. and 6 p.m. to meet our staff, to ask any questions that you might have about the office. Lastly, our Black History Month lecture series will be kicking off in collaboration with our West Virginia Department of Arts, Culture, and History. Please watch our website and social media pages for additional details. The Herbert Henderson Office of Minority Affairs and the Martin Luther King State Holiday Commission both thank you for being here today. May God bless you. Were you writing things down in your calendar? I didn't see anybody use pen. So that's why they have social media. You can use that. But it's going to be quite an exciting next few weeks, and we hope you participate in as many things as you possibly can. We will now have selections of music by the Capitol High School VIPs, Voices in Perfection Choir.
God's with us.
Thank you so much, Capitol High School. Thank you so very much. I only see one box of tissue in the room. We'll pass it along as far as it'll go. The rest of you are on your own. Felt so good. Before I introduce our two participants who will bring us meditation and prayer, the songs invoked for me a particular thought. Here are some numbers: 90, 51, 39. 90 is important because on January 15th of this year, Dr. King would have been a remarkable 90 years old. And when I realized that, I thought about, I wonder what he would think. I wonder what he would do. I wonder how he would feel. 39 is relevant because that's when he was taken away from this world. 39. Most people are just really getting revved up in their careers. Most people are really just starting to see the world. Think how much he did in those 39 years, and really, quite frankly, about 25 of those years post his theological training. 51. 51 has been the amount of time we have been without him. What have we done in the meantime? How have we spent those 51 years? Just something to think on, to ponder, to pray about if you're so inclined, and what we must do to make the next 51 years better. Thank you for that indulgence. Next, I would like to introduce a longtime friend, two longtime friends of this occasion, Dr. Sue Barazi, who is Vice President of the Islamic Association of West Virginia, followed by Rabbi Victor Recki, Congregation B'nai Jacob. Please, welcome her.
Hello everybody, good morning. And I will start with the Islamic traditional greeting by saying to you, Assalamu alaikum all, peace be upon you. I want to thank the organizer for including the Islamic Association of West Virginia in the celebration of this great man, Dr. Martin Luther King. And I am honored to be here today on this extraordinary day in American history. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who changed the course of history, not just in this country, but his influence for justice, for peace, for freedom of all mankind is felt all over the world. These are the true values Islam teaches us as well. Islam's respect for diversity. And as everybody so far has said, look around the room and what do you see? We are not created to look exactly alike. Imagine how boring that would be if we all looked like me. So Islam, respect for diversity, is originated in the Quran, our book. While describing many of Allah's signs for mankind, the Quran states, and I say it in Arabic and I will translate it, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ خَلْقُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَاخْتِلَافِ أَلْسِنَتِكُمْ وَأَلْوَانِكُمْ إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لِآيَاتٍ لِلْعَالَمِينَ. And of his signs is the creation of the heaven and earth, and the diversity of your tongues and your colors. Indeed, there are signs in this for the wise. That's chapter 30, verse 22. In these verses, God intended, He intended for people to speak other languages and to look differently and have different cultures. The Quran elaborates further in another chapter of saying, this is chapter 49, verses 13, and he says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Ya ayyuhan nasu inna khalaqnakum min dhakarin wa untha وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم. O mankind, we created you all from male and made you into nations and tribes, so that you may know one another. That's the whole purpose, and not deny each other. Indeed, God speaking to all mankind, He made you nations and tribes so that we learn about each other and get to know each other. This is the power, the creative power of Allah to bring about all of this diversity, and that we should welcome the diversity and actively tries to understand people who are different from ourselves. As Dr. Martin Luther King said in the theme of today, unity has never meant uniformity. We cannot all be the same, exact, identical. As Reverend Joseph said, is there a twins in here? I have a twins and they don't even look alike. This is true in the teaching of Islam as well. God created us all different and diverse. However, He taught us and He teaches us continuously the importance of coexisting in harmony, in peace, in understanding one another, and in love. The more we can consider and experience each other's differences, the more we will experience the commonality of our humanity. And believe me, it will enrich your life. Our challenge is not white versus black, straight versus lesbian or gay, Muslim versus Christian or Jewish or non-believer. Our challenge is to create a society where all can have access to fulfill their God-given purpose. Dr. King also said, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone out of a whole mountain, a stone of hope. With this faith, with all of our faith combined, we will be able to transform the jangling disorder of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. Today, we find a narrative of divisiveness, despair, falsehood, and rhetoric of hate and ugliness thrown at us in all directions, so that the weak among us, not all of us, the weak among us hate the other, and then we stay divided. We will need the strength in all of our faith combined to transform the narrative into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood and sisterhood. Dr. King would have done all he can to rekindle the hope of unity by helping all American and its leader declare a new path, a new unifying quest that transcend the temporary troubled time that we're facing. The message of unity and pluralism within Islam bears a striking resemblance to Dr. King's vision and ideas. In the Quran, it elaborates further in chapter 5, verses 2. It says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, وَتَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى وَلَا تَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْإِثْمِ وَالْعُدْوَانِ وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ إِنَّ اللَّهَ شَدِيدُ الْعِقَابِ. O you believers, cooperate in righteousness and piety, but do not cooperate in sin and aggression. And fear Allah, God. Indeed, Allah is severe in His penalty. We are a nation for all people, regardless of religion, regardless of your background, regardless of color, regardless of national origin, and regardless of who you choose to love or be, for that matter. As we see the cloud of darkness gathering over our political horizon, threatening with deportations, separating children from parents and throwing them in cages, threatening with Muslim registry, and isolating of certain segments of our society due to personal choice, we need to follow the great man, Dr. Martin Luther King, when he said in 1963, let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cups of bitterness and hatred. We cannot allow toxic rhetoric of anti-Muslim, anti-immigrant, anti-gay, anti-Latino, anti-LGBTQ to demonize, villainize, and dehumanize people who are different from us. We need to stand against racial and religious hatred, xenophobia, gender discrimination, and violence against any human being. This is a true message of Islam, and it is the true teaching of this great man in history, Dr. Martin Luther King. The principle this country was built on requires us all to defend not just our personal freedom and opinion, but those freedoms and opinions to do and say things that must be said to carry on the freedom of our founding fathers. Dr. Martin Luther King also said, "The time is always right to do the right thing, and this is the best time now, more than ever, for us all to do the right thing." Together, we need to stand up and let the whole world hear our voices to do the right thing. Stand up against injustice. Stand up against violence. Let us join hands and fight against prejudice, bigotry, and discrimination. We are the children of Abraham. We shall continue to work together to make Dr. King's legacy and the great civil rights movement he started move on and continue to thrive. Let us all try to do what we can. We are the children. We are of Abraham, Muslim, Christian, and Jews. Let us pray. O Allah, Almighty God, we pray that the dark cloud above will break. O Allah, we pray, God, for our country to heal its deep ache in our hearts, and we cry out for your mercy and rahmah on us. O Allah, strengthen our nation and protect us from evil. Guide our hearts, guide our leaders, elevate our society, and enrich the fabric of our country. Help us, God, work together, love one another, and help heal the divide of our land. O Allah, give us courage, compassion, service, faith, and the wisdom to know that, regardless of what happened, love and goodwill will conquer all. O God, O Allah, it is you that we place our ultimate trust in. It is you we pray to, and it is you that we ask for guidance. Amen. May God bless you all, and may God bless the United States of America.
Shalom Aleichem. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon us all. It is an honor to represent the Jewish faith tradition on this day. All of us are here this morning united as Americans together because one man, Dr. King, spoke in a voice that echoed in the chambers of our souls and in our hearts. As Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel of blessed memory, one of Dr. King's dearest Jewish friends, and one who marched with him, said, Dr. King was a sign that God had not forsaken the United States of America. God sent him to us, and his mission was sacred. That's true. But I think it is also true to say that America may have forsaken Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. This country is facing a future that is anything but bright. Dr. King's dream is challenged and, as Sue said, tested today. People of all walks of life continue to be marginalized. Legislation continues to be introduced that seek to disenfranchise. And advancements are being rolled back to create economic chaos and injustice to the most vulnerable of our citizens. And racism and hatred are alive and well despite the passing of time. Over 50 years since his passing, the vilest rhetoric of white supremacy is still freely spoken in rural America, in American cities, and by those in leadership in Washington. Legislation continues to be introduced throughout this country that hurts those who are different, those who are struggling the most. My friends, it feels as if we're going backwards. People openly attacking others for being the other, told that they don't belong here. We see a society giving in to its worst instincts, rejecting and uprooting everything that Dr. King worked so hard for this country to achieve. So if that's all true, what kind of celebration is today? Why are we here? In my Jewish tradition, we turn first not to prayer to answer that. We turn to study of the sacred text. Jews study the Torah, the 5 books of Moses. We study it in an annual cycle, using the rhythm of time and text each week to see what the Torah teaches us that week and what it calls us to do. And for the Jewish people, we are in the book of Exodus. And you all know that story. Pharaoh refuses to free the Israelites. Pharaoh dismisses each and every plague, at first as magic tricks, something his own magicians could easily match. But with each plague, his advisors, his supporters begin to fall off one by one, acknowledging the disaster that is befalling Egypt as the work of God. But not Pharaoh. Under the duress of each plague, he appears ready to free the people. Then the crisis passes, he changes his mind. Now this you all know. But here's what you don't know. Our rabbis teach us that when we get to the 7th plague, hail, for the first time, the Egyptians are offered a chance by God through a message given by Moses to take shelter and save themselves. And some do. And this is the first time that a plague comes with an escape clause, if you will, for those who believe now in the hand of God. Now here's why that's important for all of our Western religions, monotheism. Because in all our traditions, the idea of a just God meting out a collective punishment against all people, especially those who are now repenting, would be against our understanding of the most merciful God. Pharaoh is intransigent, he should be punished. His supporters who work with him, they should be punished. But why should all the people of Egypt suffer, especially if they've seen the light and now they're repenting? So the rabbis wisely note that come the 7th plague, people are now given a chance to save themselves and escape further harm. So here's my question to you. Up until now, all the Egyptians suffered under the weight of the plagues. Every one of them. When there was no water because the Nile turned to blood, every Egyptian thirsted. When vermin hit, boils, cattle disease, every Egyptian was affected. My question is, why did God wait until the 7th plague to give relief? Surely there had to have been some Egyptians who were never part of the slavery, didn't believe in the oppression. There had to have been some Egyptians, like in every society, who from the beginning thought this was wrong. What Pharaoh was doing was evil. So why was everyone punished? That's the very antithesis of a merciful God, right? So I want you to remember what Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, who I mentioned earlier, said in his first speech, standing alongside his new friend, Dr. Martin Luther King. Heschel said, in every society, few are guilty, but all are responsible. A community cannot be indifferent when they see suffering. The bystander cannot be passive when he or she witnesses cruelty, when he or she sees despicable hatred against another people, or witnesses actions against the downtrodden in the false name of law and order, security, or to foment fear. Pharaoh and his advisors may have been primarily guilty of enslaving and mistreating the Israelites, and therefore deserving of punishment. But all of Egypt, even those who never raised a fist against an Israelite, but who also never extended a hand, were responsible for the suffering that was happening before their very eyes. My friends, indifference to evil is as bad, if not worse, than evil itself. And I say that because as I began, why are we here in worship and in celebration of Dr. King this morning? Of course, we're here out of respect. We're all here out of love for this incredible man, to remember what he said and what he believed and to rejoice in his memory. Good on us. Good on us for being here this morning. And I understand that. But we need to be here to be woke and to be challenged. To remind ourselves that what we are seeing happening is not the America that we want. And to go out there and say, enough. Today must not be just a day to glorify one beautiful man here, but to say we are all responsible for what is happening out there in America. If we are singing loudly here, we have an obligation to use our powerful voices out there, to speak out in the halls of authority when we see people being abused, and to act when people are hurt. It is not enough just to be here. We need to be walking out there together and challenge those who are turning their backs on the innocent, who are struggling to survive, and inflicting harm on those who are already suffering. My friends, we may not be directly guilty when we are standing by, but we are fully responsible, and we must be as courageous as Dr. King and stand up for the most vulnerable in our society today. It wasn't until the seventh plague that some Egyptians were allowed to escape punishment, because even if they were innocent of directly harming an Israelite, as Heschel says, some are guilty, but all are responsible. My friends, so are we. And so I end with a quote from Rabbi Heschel. It was from a speech he gave in January 1963, almost to the day, as the day he met Dr. King. Heschel said, "There is an evil which most of us condone and are even guilty of, indifference to evil. We remain neutral, impartial, and not easily moved by the wrongs done to other people. Indifference to evil is more insidious than evil itself. It is more contagious, it is more universal, it is more dangerous. A silent justification makes possible an evil erupting as an exception, becoming the rule, and in turn being accepted." My friends, let us not be silent. Let us not look away. Some are guilty. All are responsible. Thank you. God bless the memory of Dr. King. God bless the state of West Virginia. And God bless the United States of America. Amen.
But there was much to consider, much to think about, much we can still do, unified, but not uniformed. It's my pleasure now to introduce again the Martin Luther King Jr. Male Chorus, along, I believe, with Capital High, for a musical selection. Chair of the Education Department, West Virginia State, Commissioner of Martin Luther King State Holiday Commission, Chair of the Living with the Dream Award. Occasionally she sleeps. Sometimes she teaches. I don't know how she all does it, but she always looks great. As well as Mrs. Sylvia Ridgway, President of the Huntington branch of the NAACP, and also the commission member of the Martin Luther King State Holiday, as we present our awards for today.
First, let the church say amen. These young people are awesome. And it is these kinds of moments that we strive for. Thank God. And our good friends, Martin Luther King, of course, they are a mainstay in the country. It gives me a great sense of pride to be able to make these awards for our 2019 Living the Dream Award recipients. And the Martin Luther King State Holiday Commission, through the years, has given these awards to honor individuals for the work that they have done. I call your attention also to the back inside cover of our program as I'm making the presentation, because I want you to think now about citizens that you would like to nominate for these awards for 2020. The first award is given in the area of scholarship. This person has made significant contributions in the area of education. And today, I am so proud to honor Dr. Jerome Gilbert. I had the opportunity to meet him personally when we had a workshop recently at the 4 Point Sheraton. And he is being honored not just because he's the 37th president of Marshall University, having been appointed in 2016, but because of the outstanding goals and initiative which he embraced on his ascension into the presidency. He has a commitment to diversity, to equity, to inclusion, with a focus on justice, scholarship, and a sense of civic awareness and public service. Those are the kinds of principles that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. spoke about, taught, and lived during his short life. Under his leadership, Dr. Gilbert has worked for the establishment of the Alliance for the Economic Development of Southern West Virginia. He is a main organizer. And he has a very powerful statement that I lifted from his biography. He stated, "At Marshall, we welcome and embrace all members of our university and local community, regardless of their national origin, race, color, sex, sexual orientation, religion, veteran status, or disabilities. We have no walls around our university, and it is an open access campus. In the context of an institution of higher learning, I would also hope that we can exchange ideas and points of view in a civil manner that will inform and educate, even in those situations when we do not agree." Upon behalf of the Martin Luther King State Holiday Commission, I salute Dr. Jerome A. Gilbert for his outstanding contributions in the area of education. Dr. Gilbert, would you please come forward and accept your award?
morning. I want to start by thanking the Commission for this honor, and I also want to thank the individuals at Marshall University that nominated me, Dr. Kelly Johnson and others. I can tell you this is an incredible honor, and I am very humbled by it. I can't think of a greater honor, actually. I've been in West Virginia for 3 years now, and I'm here by choice. Perhaps by the hand of God I was brought here. But I do feel that everyone is put on this earth for a reason. I do believe the things that happen in your life are there to change you and make you better and give you a chance to do things. I came from Mississippi. That's my native state. Just last week we honored a member of the Marshall family, the late Hal Greer, a great athlete who broke the color barrier in West Virginia. And I was thinking it was very ironic that he was at Marshall in 1954, way before many other institutions in the South had embraced diversity. It's ironic because that was the year I was born in Mississippi. And it was a long time for Mississippi to come around to where Marshall University and this state was. It's a great honor to be recognized on this day that honors Dr. King because he's one of my great heroes. And I can tell you that growing up in Mississippi as a white kid, we had a lot of unlearning to do as we matured. Because you see, Mississippi was probably the state that oppressed black people more than any other state in the country. And you grow up around that as a kid and you don't know any different. And it takes your life experiences to teach you things that you have to unlearn about that which you see around you. So I want to thank my 9th grade English teacher, Miss Beatrice Moore. I was in the 9th grade in 1968, 1969, the year of desegregation in Mississippi. She was my English teacher for half a year, the second half of the year, the half of the year when we desegregated. My first half of the year I had a white English teacher. Second half of the year I had Mrs. Moore, a black English teacher. She took a liking to me. I don't know why, but she changed my world. She changed my paradigm about how I viewed people. And she taught me how to love people regardless of the color, regardless of who they are, where they're from. Because she loved me first. And I loved her. So I thank my family, I thank this commission, but most of all, I thank Mrs. Beatrice Moore, an outstanding woman who changed my life. So thank you for this today. It means a lot to me.
Our next recipient in the area of sharing of self and selfless leadership in the public and private sector. This award will be presented to the Reverend Micah Blanks of Fairmont, West Virginia. When we on the commission read his biographical sketch, we were so impressed with the fact that in his youth, he is so able to serve the community. As pastor of the Highland Avenue United Methodist Church in Fairmont, he has made remarkable inroads in the community and has shared himself in countless ways. He willingly shares his gifts and graces by serving his congregation and community. You can find him working in local soup kitchens, transporting people to hospitals, whether they are a member of his congregation or not, comforting the bereaved, singing with the praise band, writing, teaching, preaching, and basically sharing the gift of love and service to God's people. He exemplifies sharing of self in countless ways by serving his congregation and the community. Having been called by God to serve at the age of 6, he is among the youngest pastors in the West Virginia Conference of the United Methodist Church. Reverend Blank's quote, "It is a way to bring out some fellowship in the church," and he speaks of that for his participation and organization of a community picnic where everyone is invited. And he states, "We always try to get out in the community as much as we possibly can. The more we can get out and show people our love, maybe that will be helpful to our community." That is a lesson that we all should learn and embrace. Join me in celebrating the Reverend Micah Blanks. I'm going to ask Commissioner Upson if she'll come forward also for the presentation of the awards. Let us salute the Reverend Micah Blanks of Fairmont, West Virginia.
thanks to my Heavenly Father, for without Him, we wouldn't be here. Amen, church? Well, as everyone is already well aware, I'm 28, so I was born in 1990. And in 1995, I sat in my room in Raleigh County, West Virginia, and I was watching Nick News, and Linda Ellerby came on, and it was the Civil Rights edition. And at that very moment, I learned what it meant to be in a world where you weren't always accepted, where you weren't always given the same chances and opportunities as others. And in that episode, Linda Ellerby mentioned someone, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And it was almost at that very instant, I can remember it, I fell in love with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to the point to where I thought, you know what, that's the man that I want to try to be when I grow up. And so from there, I followed him. I almost got a minor in African American history and studies, but in that time in the reading there, I read a letter of his from prison in Birmingham, Alabama. It was written in April 16th of 1963, and he stated in that letter that he didn't want to be someone who was viewed as an extremist. But then he kind of second thought it in the letter, and he said, I'm pretty sure Jesus was an extremist of love. I'm pretty sure Amos was an extremist of righteousness, of justice. I'm pretty sure Paul was an extremist of the Christian gospel. And from reading that letter, I made it a promise to myself to be someone who emulates Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and to always be an extremist of unity, an extremist of love, and someone who carries the gospel with me everywhere I go. So don't think of this as, oh, he's so young to be winning this award. But just think of it as he's doing exactly what he should be, and his mama raised him right.
Thank you very much, Reverend Blanks. Our final individual award for the Living the Dream Awards is the Governor's Living the Dream Award, which is given to a person who best exemplifies all of the characteristics of justice, scholarship, sharing of self, human and civil rights, and advocacy of peace. That person is personified in Attorney Elliot G. Hicks, a native of Charleston, educated in the Kanawha County school system, and a graduate of West Virginia University with a bachelor's degree and his Juris Doctorate. Mr. Hicks is known in the community as being a long-time trial lawyer with extensive experience in litigation, with a focus on product liability, premises liability, insurance law cases, medical malpractice defense, and higher education law. With over 37 years of practice in law, Elliot Hicks has never forgotten his roots. He has always worked with his clients to assist with resolving cases when possible without trial, with less stress, and for less money. His experience in trial law helps his clients with finding resolutions to disputes through mediation or arbitration. Through his years of service, he has been appointed to many boards and has held many honors, having served as the president of the Kanawha County Bar Association, representative to the West Virginia State Bar Board of Governors, and the West Virginia State Bar Presidency. In the community, he was elected to the Board of Directors of the West Virginia Humanities Council, a position that he still holds and has been in that position since 2015. He created a fundraising dinner for another hard-working West Virginian, the late Professor Franklin B. Cleckley, and raised over $33,000 towards the creation of the Innocence Project, which provides legal assistance for wrongly convicted inmates. And as a perfect complement to all of that, Mr. Hicks is a prolific writer. He is very passionate about matters of social justice and equity. In short, he gives a voice to the voiceless through his current columns and other publications, such as the work of Dr. Martin Luther King. So in the same manner of Dr. King, Mr. Hicks is known for his provocative speeches in venues throughout the Kanawha Valley and beyond. And he truly, skillfully speaks truth to the power. Join me in saluting our Governor's Living the Dream recipient, 2019, Attorney Elliot G. Hicks.
Thank you very much for this wonderful honor. I'm truly blessed to have people think of me this way, and it was shocking to me that anybody would even think of me for honor like this. Of course, you owe this all to a strong family. Your family and your community family are the ones that let you do anything, that enable you to achieve anything. And I grew up with a very, very strong family. My mother and my father, we lost them 37 and 41 years ago now. It's kind of amazing. Nonetheless, the messages, the wisdom they shared with me and shared with my brothers and me have lived on and have been a wonderful source of inspiration. I thank Dr. Felicia Williams, who saw something in me that caused her to nominate me for this award. Thank you very much. You know, this is no time for false modesty. This is not false modesty. You know, I see people in this community who do so much. I'm introduced today to Reverend Blacks, and I'm happy to learn of the things he does in a different region of the state from where I am. My own friends, I see David Freisling, and the things that he does, the leadership he provides through his way, through his one-on-one leadership with people. I see Gabrielle Chapman, a young woman in this community, who does wonderful things here, leading people toward more justice, better justice, teaching us how to live the way we want to, we really say we want to live. And that's impressive to me. And so I look at my own life up to this point, and I ask, you know, would I have sat at those lunch counters? Would I have ridden those buses into an earthly hell? Would I have done that? And we all have to question ourselves when we're awarded like this, is this enough? I sat on the first Martin Luther King Holiday Commission back in 1985. It was just, the holiday was just getting started, but it wasn't a holiday day off like we have today. On that commission, it started to come up, because it hadn't come up at that time, it started to come up, should we have a day off for the holiday? Or should the holiday simply be one of observance? When it was first started, it was merely one of observance, and it wasn't a day off. And I was one of those who started to think that maybe we shouldn't have it as a day off. Because when you have it as a day off, people just use it as an extra day to go to stay at the ski resort or to sleep in. I still have the first sale, the first Martin Luther King Day sale from Kelly and Cohen, the flyer for that. And I always wondered, was that the way to introduce such a hero, such a symbolic life to the people of our world? I didn't think so, but nonetheless it happened, and good. I was hoping that the State Board of Education instead would have a special plan to try to teach people in this state that's not so diverse about the things that Dr. Martin Luther King did. Well, it became the holiday, and I tried to bring my daughter to this ceremony every year, because if the schools weren't going to have that kind of a commemoration, I was going to try to have my own. And my daughter came from Marshall University, her first year there, to be with me today, and I do appreciate it. And of course, I have another daughter who's at WVU. Weather prevents her from being here. But that's something that I wanted to leave. That's a legacy that I wanted to try to provide. I wanted to plant that seed in her. You know, there are awards that you give to children to try to encourage them to move on and do better things. There are awards you give to adults as a valedictory for the things that they've already done. I'm going to take this one as the former. I'll take this as a light to cause me to do more, to help me to remember to do more, to always spur me on to help my community more than I have before. And I thank you for this. Thank you.
underrepresented students in West Virginia to pursue degrees in health sciences, technology, engineering, and mathematics, thereby hopefully increasing the number of health practitioners and advocates in the medically unserved areas of West Virginia. We proudly salute HISTA for its work, and we're asking, please come forward for a photo opportunity, and if there are members of the HISTA family, please come forward for that picture. Thank you. It is wonderful to see so many representatives and HISTA students to be with us today. The final group that will be recognized, Thanks Plain and Simple, also known as Thanks and the Rosie the Riveter Project of Charleston, was established in West Virginia with the mission of creating ways for people to do work together that is needed to improve America. In 2008, Thanks started the Rosie the Riveter Project, and one of their main goals is to identify the remaining surviving Rosie the Riveters who are alive, and they have asked for assistance in that initiative. They are planning to launch a new kind of social movement to guide people to understand the Rosie legacy and find ways for people to work together to improve their communities. The basic principles of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. that Thanks strives for are promotion of human and civil rights, promoting underserved communities, promotion of tolerance, and the resolution of conflict in a nonviolent manner. Would the representatives from Thanks Plain and Simple please come forward to accept your award and have your group picture taken.
Please, as they're being seated, please let us give another warm round for all the award winners this year. They're so wonderful. I so look forward to the opportunity to celebrate with community on the occasion of remembering Dr. King, and particularly today, this year, it just seems to be a little extra rough around the edges, and it gives me hope that a person like Reverend Blanks is there. 28, rock on, brother. That's great. thank you for staying the course all of these years. Thank you. It's a place, an opportunity where we gain hope, we gain the inspiration to continue on, to do better, to think positively, to face the world, get out there, be unified, and do what we need to do. It is now my pleasure to introduce, actually a former boss, a member of the commission, the current curator of the West Virginia Department of Arts, Culture, and History, and a commission member who will do a solo. And if you all have met Curator Reed Smith before, you know what to expect. And if you haven't, just hold on to your seats. So let us please welcome Curator Randall Reed Smith.
We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved, just like a tree that's planted by the water. We shall not be moved. We're fighting for our freedom. We shall not be moved. We're fighting for our freedom. We shall not be moved, just like a tree that's planted by the water. We shall not be moved. The unions are behind us. We shall not be moved. The unions are behind us. We shall not be moved, just like a tree that's planted by the water. We shall not be moved. Black and white together. We shall not be moved. Black and white together. We shall not be moved, just like a tree that's planted by the water. We shall not be moved. Young and old together. We shall not be moved. Young and old together. We shall not be moved, just like a tree that's planted by the water. We shall not be moved. The children are our future. We shall not be moved. The children are our future. We shall not be moved, just like a tree that's planted by the water. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved, just like a tree that's planted by the water. We shall not be moved.
Now, you get my other better half. Thank you so much for allowing me to host the first half of your program. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Michelle Easton, who is a member of our fabulous commission and Dean of the University of California School of Pharmacy. Just that little place across the river there. A fabulous individual. Please welcome Dr. Michelle Easton.
Good morning. It is my pleasure at this time of the program to Holiday Commission are organized or communicated and hopefully are welcoming to each and every one of you. On the back of your program, you will notice that we have the listing of the commissioners. There are 12 in number. And I've asked for each of the commissioners, you've seen some of them in the program thus far, but those that you haven't, I ask that all of the commissioners please stand this time to be recognized. Please give them Thank you. As noted on our program, there's one adjustment we just need to make, and that is the introduction of the keynote speaker, Jihad Dixon. Unfortunately, Commissioner Dixon was unable to be with us because of weather. So we thank him for his willingness to introduce the keynote speaker, but because of weather, he won't be with us this morning. He is with us in spirit, and we thank him for his willingness to always serve. I will be pitch hitting for Jihad Dixon, and I have the pleasure of being able to introduce to some, we're praying to others, Dr. Michelle Foster, who is our keynote speaker for this auspicious occasion. Dr. Foster has a wonderful first name. I love it too. Her name is Dr. Michelle Foster. She is the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Greater Kanawha Valley Foundation, one of the largest community foundations in Central Appalachia. Dr. Foster is an incredible, phenomenal powerhouse of a woman, of an individual, and she calls West Virginia her home. We are blessed to have her as our speaker. She, before being the CEO of the Greater Kanawha Valley Foundation, she was the CEO of KISRA, the Kanawha Institute for Social Research and Action, and under her leadership, KISRA became a very well-known organization known for doing outstanding activities, being very impactful in our communities. Dr. Foster's original career is as a chemical engineer. And you may say, well, she's not really doing chemical engineering now. Well, maybe she's not doing chemical engineering, but I will share with you that she is doing social and community engineering. The engineer takes the application of knowledge primarily in the sciences, and usually is someone who plans, who builds, who organizes, who maintains, and that's what Dr. Michelle Foster is for our community. The bio in your program shares with you many of the accolades that Dr. Foster has received on local, state, regional, and national levels, and we are so pleased to have this gem in our midst. Michelle Foster, from this body, has received the Living the Dream Award in 2016. She's also received several other recognitions that are noted in your program. She's a member of several community organizations, such as the Charleston Rotary, Philanthropy West Virginia, where she serves as a board member. She's a member of the Charleston Institute chapter of the Links Incorporated. She is a member of several other organizations. Her love for the Lord is apparent. She is a faithful member of the Ferguson Baptist Church, and Ferguson Memorial Baptist Church, excuse me. And she is someone who you see not only leading organizations, but you also see her doing. And so we have an opportunity today to hear some wonderful, inspiring words from Dr. Michelle Foster. I will share with you, I've worked with Michelle on boards, and I will share that I have been impressed by her level of commitment, by her level of compassion, by her level of wanting to be involved and make a difference. And she will not put her name next to anything that is not quality. And so we have the opportunity today to hear from a wonderful former chemical engineer, current social and community engineer. Please warmly welcome Dr. Michelle Foster. the other Michelle. Thank you to the commission for inviting me. I acknowledge all of our elected officials, our distinguished guests, and our clergy, and all of the honorees. You make us proud. I am humbled to stand before you today to honor the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I take this invitation very seriously, as I'm mindful of the fact that if it were not for the work of Dr. King and other civil rights leaders, my career achievements, my educational achievements, my experience living in these United States would have been different. I am blessed with a fulfilling life, and it seems like sometimes I, may walk around like I got it all together, but I come from very meager beginnings. I'm an immigrant. I was born in a small South American country called Guyana, formerly British Guyana. My family immigrated to Brooklyn when I was 17 years old. We came to the U.S. legally via a big jumbo jet through JFK. So a border wall would not have prevented us. Finished basement, while my parents worked and saved most of what they earned. And within 5 years, they were able to purchase our first home. And we became naturalized U.S. citizens. Being a citizen, it means that I can vote. And I vote every chance I get. I've lived in New York, I've lived in Ohio. Almost 26 years ago, I was recruited by Union Carbide, and I chose West Virginia. I left chemical engineering over 20 years ago, and I still chose to stay in West Virginia. You see, I found my purpose here. My life has meaning here. I believe that better is possible here. So I'm here until God says otherwise. As I look out into this diverse audience, I see brilliant, compassionate, caring people, all positively impacting various sectors in our community, in different industries. I'm here representing philanthropy, the institutional philanthropy sector, because I'm not giving away my own money. I'm trying to give away other people's money. I love the fact that we get to invest in organizations that are making lives better and making communities better. I relish the fact that we get to invest directly into the lives of West Virginians via our scholarship program, which this year had a record year, 812 applicants. Education is very important to me and my family, even though my maternal grandmother, for example, only had a 4th grade education. But she instilled in my mom and my aunts and uncles, and in us, the importance of acquiring an education. So our scholarship program is near and dear to my heart. Our sector, philanthropy, exists because this people has had and continues to have some of the most generous, extraordinarily generous people. People who earn their riches through extraction, financial industries, whatever it is, and whose love for their fellow man compel them to put that love into action by sharing of their wealth. These are people who believe that better is possible. Please know that I'm here. I'm not wearing my Valley Foundation hat today. I'm here as a private citizen, so anything I say does not necessarily represent the views of the board and staff of the Greater Valley Foundation. That's my disclaimer. Yes, better is possible in West Virginia, but we have to work even harder now to make better a reality. So the title of my message is The Fierce Urgency of Now, Unity as a Prerequisite to Equity. My journey from engineering to community economic development and then on to philanthropy has been propelled by my increasing awareness of the disparities that exist between African Americans and whites in our in our state. Many of these disparities are economic in nature. Many of them are social in nature. Although they're numerous, please indulge me as I highlight a few that exist in poverty and education and employment and a few other areas. Then I will deliver a call to action where we all can get involved. For us to be energized to take action, I believe we need a reality check. We need to be faced with some facts. Facts, not alternative facts, just facts. According to Mahatma Gandhi, poverty is the worst form of violence. West Virginia usually has, as you know, among the highest poverty rates in the nation. And more African Americans are below that poverty level. Even though President Lyndon Johnson launched the war on poverty 55 years ago, as he stated, to cure poverty and prevent it, poverty still plagues many families. Over 18% of West Virginians live in poverty, compared to 12% of citizens in the U.S. Of the 1.8 million people living in West Virginia, only 3.6% of us are African Americans. However, 30% of us, 30% of African Americans live in poverty in our state, compared to 17% of whites. If you dig a little deeper, you will discover an even greater percentage of young West Virginians are living below the poverty level. 1 in 4, to be precise, of West Virginians who are below the ages of 18 live in poverty. Similarly, 23% of whites are in poverty, but would you believe that 46% of African Americans below that 18 years age group live in poverty. In his I Have a Dream speech, Dr. King said that the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. I believe this still rings true today. In these challenging economic times, it takes 2 incomes for a typical family to thrive. 17% of white families in the state are led by single women, compared to 39% of African American families. A wise person once said that good health and good sense are 2 of life's greatest blessings. West Virginians deserve to be blessed, but our population ranks among the bottom tier states in numerous health risk factors, like obesity rate. Our rate is 38%, the lowest in the nation. And it's even higher among people in minority people, 45% compared to 36% of whites. High poverty levels, income inequality, and limited access to affordable food contribute to these high obesity rates. Conditions in the places where people live, learn, work, and play affect a wide range of health risk factors and outcomes, as Dr. Michelle knows. These conditions are known as the social determinants of health. Poverty limits access to healthy foods and safe neighborhoods. Furthermore, it's known that more education is a predictor of better health. And as you'll see as I proceed in my message, that this is also an area of concern. Differences in health are striking in communities where poor social determinants of health, such as unstable housing, low income, unsafe neighborhoods, or substandard education. Many Americans African Americans live in areas of the state where there are low social determinants, poor social determinants of health. Just sharing a few facts. Nelson Mandela said that education is the most powerful weapon you can use to change the world. Historically, education has been a priority to African Americans. Even before emancipation, African Americans in Western Virginia established a school to educate their children. It was the Sumner School, and it was opened in Parkersburg in 1862. It was the first publicly financed black school south of the Mason-Dixon line. when the state took over support in 1867. Soon, blacks began to establish schools in towns across West Virginia, creating a need for teachers to educate black students. And there was a school established in Harper's Ferry in 1867 as a grammar school as well as a teacher education school. And then in 1891, West Virginia Colored Institute was established, which is now West Virginia State. And later on, in 1895, the Bluefield Colored Institute was established, and that is now Bluefield State. Racial disparities in education among adults in West Virginia are not as great as some of the other areas I'll be touching on today. Educational attainment in our state is kind of low to begin with. Only 20% of West Virginians who are 25 years and older have bachelor's degrees, compared to 31% of Americans. The educational attainment of African Americans in this category is 16%, compared to 20% white. Then there's the education achievement gap among younger age groups. This achievement gap is a matter of race and class. In West Virginia and across the U.S., a gap in academic achievement persists because minority and disadvantaged students and their white counterparts are not being treated the same. Poverty, poor parental involvement in education, not enough books in the home, and not enough parents in the home have been identified as reasons for this academic achievement gap. According to experts, what happens is schools often, not all schools, but many schools, take students who have less to begin with and then systematically give them less in school. In referring to the Emancipation Proclamation in his I Have a Dream speech, Dr. King said, "It is obvious today that America has defaulted on this promissory note insofar as her citizens of color are concerned. Instead of honoring this sacred obligation, America has given the Negro people a back check, a check that has come back marked insufficient funds. Some of us today are still crying out insufficient funds. Asset accumulation is the foundation of economic mobility for low and moderate income families. However, a wealth gap exists. The net worth of white households is 20 times that of African American households. This wide wealth gap is a reflection of systemic and social barriers that have long since existed and have limited economic mobility. Communities of color face obstacles obtaining reliable jobs to generate consistent and adequate income, or even accessing banking services for future investments. Looking at the home ownership rate, in our state it's relatively high, so we're the highest in the nation. Even though all homes are not created equal, we have 76% home ownership rate in our state. However, only 46% of African Americans own homes, and compared to 71% of whites. In a state like ours, where owning a car, because of our terrain and because of our limited public transportation system, a car is considered an asset. About a quarter of blacks do not even own automobiles, compared to only 8% of whites. African Americans have a hard time getting, starting businesses, getting capital to start a business, so we have a low rate of business startups. Then there's the issue of no access to credit and higher rates of credit scores. Also an issue where a white family it's second nature to open up a bank account at a federally insured facility, bank institution. Banking accounts are less or at a lower rate in black families. Just sharing a few facts. Historically, the lowest in the nation, West Virginia's labor force participation rate is currently at 53%, compared to national rate of 63%. 10 percentage point difference. This means that just a little over half of the people in our state are looking for work or working. There's even a difference between whites and blacks. There's a 5 percentage point difference overall and a 15% percentage point difference when you're comparing prime age groups, which is the 25 to 54 age group. Our reasons for this low participation rate include aging population, drug abuse, poor health outcomes, and education. There's also a mismatch between the skills that West Virginians have versus the skills that are in demand by employers. The final set of stats I'd like to share with you today is regarding our criminal justice system. Unemployment and substance abuse contribute to the growing prison population. The average yearly inmate in the West Virginia DOC, Division of Corrections, has more than tripled over the last 20 years. More than tripled, while our overall population continues to decline. And even though West Virginia is less than 4% black, our prison population is 12% black. So there is disproportionate representation in our criminal justice system. And since 92% of the people in prison are between the ages of 20 and 59, which includes that 20 to 54 prime age group, I deduce that there is a link between African Americans being incarcerated and their lower labor force participation rates. Great opportunities to make a change. Yes, disparities between blacks and whites abound in West Virginia and in these United States, and many of them stem from poverty. However, I would be remiss if I failed to acknowledge the role of racism in the lived experiences of people of color in our state. Racism is a root of poverty and a reason for the disparities that we see. It is both overt and covert, and it takes three closely related forms: individual, institutional, and systemic. Individual racism consists of overt acts by individuals that cause death, injury, destruction of property, denial of services or opportunity. Institutional, on the other hand, is more subtle, but no less destructive. It involves policies and practices and procedures of institutions that have disproportionately negative effect on racial minorities' access to and quality of goods, services, and opportunities. Systemic racism is the basis of individual and institutional racism. It is the value system that is embedded in a society that supports and allows discrimination. The institutional and systemic forms of racism establish separate and independent barriers to access and quality of services. It should be noted that institutional racism does not have to result from human agency or intention. Thus, racial discrimination can occur in institutions even when the institution does not intend to make distinctions based on race. Bank lending policies like redlining and racial profiling by security and law enforcement workers are forms of institutional racism. The under and misrepresentation of certain racial groups in the media and barriers to employment or professional advancement based on race are also forms of institutional racism. Well, my friends, despite the fact that racism is still prevalent, and within the last couple of years, it appears that we are regressing as a nation instead of progressing, I still believe that better is possible. And I will keep working to make life better for the least and the left out until my last day on this earth. We are better than this. So where do we go from here? Written in 1967, Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community is actually the title of Dr. King's final book. captured Dr. King's analysis of the state of American race relations and the movement after a decade of U.S. civil rights struggles. He wrote that with Selma and the Voting Rights Act, one phase of development in the civil rights movement came to an end. He believed that the next phase in the movement would bring its own challenges. As African Americans continue to make demands for better jobs, higher wages, decent housing, and an education equal to that of whites, and a guarantee that the rights won in the Civil Rights Act of '64 and the Voting Rights Act of '65 would be enforced by the federal government. In the book, he makes several recommendations to African Americans, and he refers to, he used the title at the time, the Negro. First, the Negro is to gain self-respect, a rugged sense of somebodyness. Second, he is to work passionately for group identity. This plea is directed especially to middle-class and professional Negroes, many of whom fail to or refuse to identify themselves and work with their less educated or less fortunate brethren. Third, the Negro must take the initiative to implement the rights and opportunities he already has won, to walk through the doors that have already been opened. Fourth, he must go on with this struggle for full equality through mass nonviolent action and the ballot. Fifth, and finally, the Negro must push his claims for freedom and equality beyond of decent housing and adequate income. And in this struggle, the Negro must see himself as only a part of a larger mass of millions of poverty-stricken Americans. Let me remind you that my topic today is the fierce urgency of now. Unity is as a prerequisite to equity. Note that I said equity and not equality. Equity and equality are two strategies we can use in an effort to produce fairness. Equity is giving everyone what they need to be successful. Equality is treating everyone the same. Equality aims to promote fairness, but it can only work if everyone starts in the same place and needs the same help. This is not the case for African Americans living in these United States. So we're talking about equity. In preparing this message, I felt the need to do some market research on the unity theme. So of course, I went to Facebook. That's just where you go. Asking my Facebook friends, what does unity mean to them? Over 50 people with diverse backgrounds responded. Some notable responses included: unity is the commitment to stand with each other in a fundamental commitment to equity so that no one is left behind. Unity recognizes that those with privilege in any context are committed to solidarity with those who don't have privilege and to defer to their vision of the way forward to address those inequities. Unity is being unified in a common purpose despite differences. It's bringing people together to advance the good. Unity could be perceived as the absence of discord, but harmony does not equal unity. Unity requires action. Let me thank all my, I know some of you are in here. Thank you for your input. Unity requires action. We are now faced with the fact that tomorrow is today. We are confronted with the fierce urgency of now. In this unfolding conundrum of life and history, there is such a thing as being too late. This is no time for apathy or complacency. This is a time for vigorous and positive action. That was one of my favorite quotes from Dr. King. And it's the basis for my message and title of my message today, and for my call to action. I implore you, first of all, to get proximate, get close, lean in. Regardless of your current assignment, regardless of your current sector, regardless of whether you're active in a career or retired, we all have to become engaged in the movement. And Virginia Renaissance movement. Let us come together to make life better for all West Virginians while working to eliminate disparities and supporting equity. You may have heard that to whom much is given, much will be required. We are blessed with many talents and treasures, and our Creator expects us to make time to use these gifts to glorify Him and benefit others who may need a hand up. We are better than this. Let us stand together, black and white, men and women, young and old, Christians, Jews, and Muslims, straight and gay, all of us, in a fundamental commitment to equity so that no one is left behind. We have to step out of our comfort zones, that is, be willing to challenge ourselves to do what is uncomfortable and fully appreciate the plight of marginalized individuals and families. Getting proximate may mean listening to people who we have only dealt with from afar, those not in our social circles. It may mean taking the time to mentor or coach a young person on her way out of a debilitating situation or on her way up the career ladder. It may mean volunteering at homeless shelter or soup kitchen. It may mean examining the policies and procedures and systems in your business and in your organizations, in your offices, and making sure that diversity, equity, and inclusion are considerations. It may mean taking an issue you care about to your mayor, your state legislator, your congressional delegation, so that policies, systems, and the environment can be changed for the better. It may even mean running for office at the local, state, or national level. Friends, there is power in proximity. We also have to continue to change the narrative about our state. According to a well-known proverb, life and death are in the power of the tongue. West Virginia is a great place to live for people of all ages and races who may want to change the world. There's so much access here. You can get to your congressional delegation pretty easily. You can get to your mayor pretty easily. It's a great place where you can make a difference, raise a family, and find a real community. If we don't appreciate our state, then who will? We need our population to grow. We need our tax base to grow, which means that we have to be able to attract new enterprises and new diverse residents. It's time to embrace diversity as characterized by race and ethnicity and gender and age, religion, national origin, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, everybody. It's time to embrace all people. We may be at the bottom of some list, but we rank in the top 10 of the amount of time we spend together as neighbors and in the time we spend with family and friends. And we've got a beautiful, let's not forget the beauty of our state. The trees and the mountains and the rivers and the natural wonders. And we have the most, some of them, I've lived in a couple places, and I've met some of the most kind and friendly people right here in West Virginia. It's a great place. So let's sell all of these attributes to everyone who would listen. Most of all, we have to remain hopeful. Yes, we have some challenges, we have racial disparities, but all is not lost. We are better than this. I see a lot of leaders in this room. Let me remind you that hope is at the core of leadership. Hope provides complete confidence, optimism, and enthusiasm for the work we're doing. Hope propels us to push a little harder, to keep fighting and to persevere through difficult times. Hope delivers the belief that we need to keep working for equity. Hope gives focus to the outcomes we desire. So let us remain hopeful as we take action to make West Virginia better, as we take action to eliminate disparities, as we take action to make our state more equitable. So if you forget everything I said, just know as you leave here today, we've got some issues, but we have got to get proximate. We have got to change the narrative about our state. and we've got to be more hopeful because we are better than this. And let us, whatever works for you, let's personalize this charge. As the great hymnologist Charles Wesley wrote, a charge to keep I have, a God to glorify, a never-dying soul to save, and fitted for the sky, to serve this present age, my calling to fulfill. Oh, made all my powers engage to do the Master's will. Arm me with watchful care, as in thy sight to live, and now thy servant, Lord, prepare a strict account to give. Help me to watch and pray, and still in thee rely. Oh, let me not my trust betray, but press to realms high. Thank you for this invitation. those of my fellow commissioners when I say every year this celebration, this commemoration gets gooder and gooder. It gets better and better. And so it has been a pleasure and joy for us to be here. Before we have the benediction, we just have a couple of quick announcements. We certainly want to invite each and every one of you to join us in our symbolic march immediately following after the benediction. Right away, we're going to head over to the Capitol. We are pleased that the Charleston Rotary Club will be the marshals for our march. We will then assemble at the Capitol and have a bell-ringing ceremony that will proceed shortly after our arrival there. I was remiss, or we were remiss, by recognizing any of our elected or appointed officials who are in the audience. I do see Senator Capito's assistant, Mary Elizabeth Eckerson from Senator Capito's office. We welcome you. Are there any other elected or appointed officials here? And this is from Congressman Mooney's office. Thank you for your attendance here. If there are any other elected or appointed officials, we thank you for being here with us. All of us have a role in our next steps. Our guest speaker talked about us having the importance of continuing to have hope, and I'd just like to share Dr. King's quote on hope that says, "We must accept finite disappointment, but never lose infinite hope." And so with that, I'll turn the program over to the shepherd of this house, and we appreciate Asbury for always being so gracious, so accommodating for us to have this annual event.
Let us stand together. Oh, you look so good standing together. You really do. I really enjoyed it. I hope some of you maybe even saw it before I did when I looked over and saw these young people just swinging all around in their arms. Oh, they got to get up, get up, get up. That way. And finally somebody else noticed, and somebody else noticed, and somebody said, "Y'all come over here." We need that energy. Oh my goodness, the future of West Virginia, the future of this country, the future of this world, we need all that energy. All that energy. Let us be in prayer. O God of grace and God of glory, on your people, pour your power, that we may become our true selves, all brothers and sisters of the one great family of humanity, your family. And we belong one to another and all to you. And we pray you will grant us courage for the living of this hour, to be your people together in spite of ourselves, to do the work